Gentle vibrations were the only way to tell the Kigarian delegate, one Lord Alaish Meg, that he was in fact traveling at several times the speed of sound through the atmosphere. He had chartered a flight on a private transport, a small luxury he'd allowed himself after his months of work to dismantle the system of barbaric slavery that was holding back progress. The vessel, the Lily Rose, was a human ship, renowned for their ability to construct ships of superior quality, if little else. They had also been one of the allied nations against the practice of slavery, something to do with their own history and finding it distasteful. His pilot was a woman, something that had initially caught him off guard, as his own species women were quite rare off the main world, and rarer still in professions. But when you're an amphibian race with an extremely precise breeding schedule in limited space, it was less surprising that women would be protected and revered as they were. Leaning over, Lord Meg watched the woman in the cockpit, her hands firmly on the controls, her face a mark of focus. He hadn't realized humans were so untrusting that they would sit at the controls constantly, though he didn't mind. The pilot had put on some form of gentle music, and had even made food available to him before departure. All that had been lovely, and he had intended to review the service well already, but he was surprised his captain was so engaged that she had not made time for talk. It must be a human custom, he mused to himself. It was a few moments later as the ship crested into space, cutting away from the planet. Captain McLeod made a quick call to the local space traffic controller, thanking them for their ascent vectors, and then lined up for their jump to FTL. A moment later, they were in slipspace. Finally, she pushed back from the controls and came to join him. Across the table from him, she sat down, in her comfortable slacks and clean-pressed button-up shirt. "Lord Meg, I apologize for the delay to orbit," she started with. "We were directed around a local weather storm, but we are underway. At current velocity, we're expected to make it to your world in the next 2 days." She smiled, and Alaish shuddered, but kept his face as static as possible. Humans bared their teeth too much for his liking. "I have prepared the quarters for you, should you desire to use them at any point," she concluded with.
"Captain McLeod, I really must ask something,"
he said, settling into his chair a little more, and unbuckling his safety harness. Seatbelt, she had called it.
"Your ship must be new, if you do not trust it for a simple orbital ascent without sitting at the controls."
This caused the woman's face to twist a little, a mask of confusion, and for a moment he was concerned he had offended. Was it taboo to talk about new vehicles with others in human culture? "Please, Lord Meg, it is just Nora. But I have to ask, whatever do you mean by that? Why wouldn't I sit at the controls?"
"Why, you surely let the computer do all the work,"
he said, as though it were a universal truth.
"There is no need to sit and watch it, unless it is a new ship and you are still getting used to its behavior. Though I must commend your choice. This ship rides smoother than many Kigarian ones."
He paused when he saw the smile had faded entirely, and instead Captain McLeod, Nora, was looking at him with a cocked head and a gaze of utter bewilderment. "Your lordship, this vessel was my father's. It is nearly 40 years old. As for the computer, no. There is no ascent control system on this ship. While well appointed for long travels, it's not a fancy cruise liner. Even then, a pilot usually does the flying. The computer is but a backup." Now it was his turn to be confused.
"I am terribly sorry,"
he said,
"but there must be an issue with our translators. Did you say the ship's computer is the backup?"
She nodded slowly to him, and he took a moment to consider this.
"So, you're telling me you flew us the entire way to orbit?"
She nodded again. He scoffed and turned to look out the window. Surely there was a misunderstanding. He looked to the girl again, and then back to the stars.
"Human resource vessels are regarded for their absolute majesty and ingenuity, because they use absolutely no living crew. The entire process is automated. Your mining operations are automated, a system most species struggle with. And you're telling me you fly your ships by hand?"
She nodded a final time, and he crossed his arms together and huffed.
My dear, you will have to excuse me for being rude, but there is no way an organic brain flew us the whole way to orbit that smooth. That just can't be so.
This caused the woman opposite him to look offended, and she pushed a strand of brown hair from in front of her face that hadn't really been in the way. I'm a damn good pilot, she retorted. And besides, computers fail, make mistakes, and don't always focus on the things that matter. Sure, they can give you an ascent trajectory, even calibrate to avoid a bumpy ride, but they can't really feel the air the way we can. They're good, don't get me wrong, and drones are some of the best methods to move stuff. But when it comes to a flight that is good and bad, a flight with real human instinct behind it is going to win every time, and you can take that to the bank. With that, she stood quickly and walked from the room, leaving the delegate to sit by himself, only soft classical music playing in the background. The result of the flight was without incident. The matter dropped and not discussed further. The pair shared a few laughs, a round of stories, and even a few intoxicating beverages were exchanged at one point. At the end of it all, they docked with a station in orbit of his planet, and he was on his way. But he had watched his pilot intensely. He had watched her make slight course corrections, adjustments to attitude, and had flown the entire landing procedure in the docking bay without any automated assistance. He took many trips from that day, almost none of them flown by hand. The only exception was when a descent computer had failed on approach once, and he had watched pilots scramble to land. But it had been one of the worst experiences of his life. He started to watch and pay attention to when a ship's computer flew, the mechanical way it moved, the way it shifted around. Yes, it was more efficient. It flew a perfect pattern, and there was never any question as to whether or not the computer was thinking. It was always making small adjustments as it went. But it didn't feel right. The ride was smooth enough, but it always felt like it was reacting. The turns were clean, but never gave a good view. The corrections were faster, but something was lost in the journey. Something was missing. Soon, there was only one race he trusted to get him around. The only people that could give him what he was missing. The human touch.